Why didn't medieval armor protect the arms and legs? The answer lies in the balance between survival, movement, and resources. Knights and soldiers prioritized the head and torso because those areas contained vital organs where a single blow could end a life instantly. Covering the limbs with heavy steel restricted mobility, drained stamina, and made it harder to fight or march for hours. Shields, formations, and horses often shielded the extremities, reducing the need for full coverage. And above all, armor was extremely costly, so most fighters could only afford helmets and breastplates, leaving arms and legs with lighter or minimal protection. Number 1. Vital areas first. Medieval armor followed a simple survival logic: protect what kills quickest. The chest and head held the organs that ended fights in seconds. Heart, lungs, major vessels, and the brain, so metal and money concentrated there. A blade sliding between ribs, a spear thrust that collapses a lung, or a crushing blow to the skull stopped a combatant immediately. A cut to a forearm, or a gash on a calf, hurt, sometimes badly, but usually left a window to pull back, regroup, or be pulled to safety. That difference in lethality drove the whole design. Thick gambesons under mail, or plates around the torso, rigid helmets and visors, collars and gorgets for the neck, and reinforced shoulders to keep the core intact. Limited resources reinforced the same choice. Armor had a weight and cost budget, and both were tight. Smiths and patrons spent those budgets where the return was highest, so dense layers and shaped plates clustered over the trunk, while limbs often made do with padding, mail, or partial splints. This wasn't negligence. It was triage under battlefield conditions and medieval medicine. Surgeons could stitch and splint an arm, or shin, and sometimes save a limb. Punctured chests or smashed skulls were another story. Weapon behavior in real fights pointed at the center as well. Spears, lances, and polearms naturally tracked to the largest target in motion. The torso, especially in massed formations, or from horseback, where height and speed drove points into breast and shoulder lines. Even swords, when swung in tight melees, landed where bodies pressed together: ribs, collarbones, and faces. Shields amplified this pattern. A large kite or heater shield, carried close to the body, occluded much of the arms and legs when angled properly, and overlapped with neighbors in a line, turning many limb strikes into glancing hits or misses. With the shield handling many threats to the periphery, armor on the core did the heavy lifting against what slipped through. Biomechanics added another push. Joints need range, and wrapping elbows and knees in heavy, early-period metal-blocked reach dulled footwork and drained stamina. Keeping limbs lighter preserved speed for feints, recoveries, and long marches, while the weight stayed where movement mattered least, the chest and back. Over time, better articulation improved limb coverage, but the principle that set priorities never changed. The fastest path to a kill ran through the torso and head, so that's where the best steel went. Arms and legs, while not ignored, stayed a step behind, because the math of survival demanded it. Number 2. Movement over heavy steel. Combat in the Middle Ages rewarded bodies that could accelerate, pivot, and recover without delay, and armor design followed that reality. Arms and legs formed the moving ends of the body's levers, so every extra plate on a forearm or shin increased the effort needed to start and stop motion. Weight placed far from the torso raised the moment of inertia and turned quick cuts, parries, and steps into slow, energy-hungry actions. Sword work depended on a clean, kinetic chain from hips through shoulders to the blade, and stiff elbows or heavy greaves dulled that whip-like transfer. Climbing siege ladders, bracing a pike, cocking a crossbow windlass, or mounting and dismounting a horse demanded knee flexion, ankle roll, and shoulder rotation that early rigid pieces often pinched or blocked. Mail and padded cloth on the limbs gave a middle ground, decent cut resistance with enough give to keep range and cadence, while the heaviest metal stayed over chest and head where it didn't fight every stride. Stamina decided battles as much as steel. Campaigns meant dawn marches, guard shifts, sudden skirmishes, and then a main engagement. Fatigue compounded across hours and days. Over-armoring the limbs meant faster heat buildup, more sweat, and shorter bursts before technique collapsed into clumsy swings and slow feet. In formation, where spears and shields locked together, limb plates snagged on neighbors and trapped weapons, while lighter sleeves and hose allowed small corrections that kept a line coherent. Cavalry needed clean leg motion to cue a horse and stand in the stirrups over broken ground. Thick cuisses and inflexible pollens could interfere with seat and balance at the moment of impact. Archers and crossbowmen faced similar trade-offs. The draw required scapular glide and elbow travel. Excess mass on the forearm degraded release timing and fatigued the rotator cuff. So many kept limb armor minimal to maintain shot volume. Falls were another quiet killer. Battlefields were muddy, churned by hooves and wheels, littered with splinters, stakes, and dropped gear. When tripping was frequent, flexible knees and ankles mattered more than hard shells. A fighter who could tuck, roll, and spring up survived more often than one who landed stiff and struggled to rise. Later, engineering softened these penalties, articulated coders and polearms, sliding rivets, floating lames, splinted greaves, and mail voiders at the joints. But those refinements came with cost, and still added mass that drained endurance over distance. The calculus stayed steady. Put the best steel where a single strike ended life. Keep the limbs light enough to keep breathing under control. Footwork sharp and hands fast, because mobility, not maximum coverage, kept a fighter in the fight. Number 3. Shields and battle tactics. In medieval warfare, shields were not an optional accessory, but a central part of survival, and their presence shaped the way armor developed. A large kite shield, common in the 11th and 12th centuries, stretched from the shoulder down to the shin, covering much of the body in a single piece of equipment. When angled correctly, it created a mobile wall that absorbed arrows, spear thrusts, and sword strikes aimed at the arms and legs. Even when the kite shield gave way to the smaller heater shield in the later Middle Ages, fighters could still protect their limbs effectively by positioning it to guard the left side of the body, while the right hand managed the weapon. The practical coverage of shields reduced the need to weigh down the limbs with heavy metal, especially in situations where speed and maneuvering mattered more than absolute coverage. In close infantry formations, the shield's role expanded beyond the individual. Soldiers overlapped their shields to create a barrier where exposed flesh became rare. This tactic, resembling the earlier Roman testudo or the Viking shield wall, allowed warriors to concentrate protection without relying on complete armor sets. In such a formation, attacks to the arms and legs were harder to land because reaching past the barrier required openings that rarely came. When the defensive wall collapsed, or when fighters broke into single combat, the torso and head remained the priority targets, not the limbs. This explains why central armor remained more elaborate than limb defenses. Mounted knights also demonstrated the tactical value of shields. The left arm carried the shield, while the right hand controlled the weapon, and in a charge the shield faced the enemy directly, covering much of the body's vulnerable side. Legs were protected by the shield's lower edge and by the bulk of the horse itself, which served as an additional barrier. Since a mounted warrior's power came from speed and mass, not from standing toe-to-toe with enemies, extra armor on the legs was less important than keeping the rider balanced and unencumbered. The chaos of battle further reinforced these choices. Most strikes in mass melees targeted what was largest and easiest to hit: torsos, shoulders, and heads. Arms and legs were smaller, faster-moving targets, and less reliable places to aim in the press of hundreds of bodies. Only in controlled environments like tournaments or judicial duels, where precision mattered and combat was one-on-one, did limb strikes become more frequent, and in those contexts, more complete arm and leg protection appears in the record. The logic of battlefield survival and the shield's role in absorbing peripheral strikes explain why medieval armor makers consistently prioritized the core while leaving the limbs with lighter, more flexible coverage. Number 4. The cost of armor. Armor followed an unforgiving budget that blended coin, labor, and upkeep, and those economics pushed protection toward the head and torso while leaving limbs lighter. Steel plate for a breast and back demanded the thickest, most uniform material, careful heat treatment, and long bench hours from master armorers. Mistakes there ruined the whole harness. By contrast, limb defenses could be delayed, simplified, or skipped without immediately endangering life, so they became the variable line item in a fighter's kit. Acquisition was only the first bill. Straps, buckles, and liners wore out quickly, and elbows, knees, and shins took constant abrasion from marching, kneeling, and riding. Replacing couters, polearms, greaves, and their leatherwork multiplied maintenance costs across a campaign season, while a well-shaped helmet and a solid torso defense survived many years. That difference in durability concentrated investment at the core. Material supply reinforced the same pattern. Quality iron and steel were not evenly available. Importing plate from major centers or commissioning local work raised prices. Workshops in renowned hubs produced elegant, articulated limb pieces, but shipping, middlemen, and guild markups made them luxury goods. For many soldiers, second-hand markets, battlefield salvage, and piecemeal upgrades were the norm. A good helmet first, then a breastplate over mail, gauntlets to save hands, and only later, if wages, loot, or patron credit allowed, cuisses, greaves, and full arm harnesses. Opportunity cost mattered as much as price tags. A war-ready household needed horses, tack, weapons, and spare gear, plus pay for squires and retainers. A knight who spent heavily on leg plates but lacked a reliable mount or a serviceable lance was poorly balanced for the realities of campaign life. Infantry budgets were even tighter. Archers and billmen prioritized a stout helmet and a padded jack or mail shirt that stopped cuts and spread impact. Limb armor that slowed rate of fire or tired legs reduced overall unit value. Fiscal policies and social display added another layer. Wealth signaled authority, so elites often purchased showy pieces. Yet even among nobles, the smartest spending put the finest steel where fatal blows landed. Meanwhile, town and crown arsenals buying munition-grade sets standardized the essentials and trimmed extras. Bulk procurement favored torso pieces and simple helmets that fit many bodies, while complex limb articulations were harder to stock and maintain. Armor economics also rewarded modularity. Mixing mail, splints, and plates around joints cut costs while retaining some defense, but every rivet and sliding lame increased production time and repair needs. In short, the total cost of ownership purchase, transport, tailoring, repair, and replacement made comprehensive limb coverage a poor return on limited resources. Concentrating top-quality metal on the core delivered the greatest survival per coin and kept fighters funded, mobile, and equipped for the next campaign. Number 5. Changes in later centuries. By the 14th century, the entire landscape of warfare shifted, and armorers were forced to respond. The longbow, with its ability to penetrate mail from a distance, and the increasingly powerful crossbow created new threats that armor designed for earlier sword and spear combat could not fully withstand. Infantry formations carried long polearms, halberds, and pikes capable of hooking, thrusting, and striking at angles that exposed vulnerable areas of the body, including limbs. This new reality drove a steady expansion of protective gear. Articulated plates began to appear at the elbows and knees, carefully riveted to allow movement while dispersing the force of blows. Greaves encased the shins, polearms guarded the knees, and couters shielded the elbows, while gauntlets evolved into elaborate fingered designs that gave dexterity yet absorbed strikes. These advances represented a technical breakthrough in metallurgy and design, as smiths learned how to craft curved plates that deflected impact instead of shattering. Still, complete limb protection was far from universal. The high cost of producing fully articulated plate harnesses meant that only the wealthiest knights and nobles could commission them. A full suit of plate armor required extensive labor, specialized tools, and imported iron or steel, making it an investment equal to land or horses. For common soldiers, partial solutions were more realistic. Many wore mixed equipment, combining mail sleeves with splints, or padded cloth reinforced with small plates sewn in, known as brigandines. These offered some limb protection, but were lighter and cheaper, and importantly, they allowed men to endure long marches, carry supplies, and fight repeatedly without collapsing under the sheer weight of steel. Ceremonial and tournament armor show the extremes of this evolution. In jousts or formal duels, fighters expected blows to land with precision on arms and legs, so full suits became standard in those contexts. Knights could afford ornate, polished steel that covered every inch, not only for protection, but also as a display of status. On the battlefield, however, the image of the knight encased head to toe in shining plate was rare. Even when limb armor was available, commanders often emphasized speed, endurance, and formation cohesion over perfect coverage. Massed infantry needed to remain mobile, archers required flexibility, and cavalry needed riders who could balance and control their horses. The legacy of these later centuries shows that the decision to armor or not armor the limbs was never static. It reflected a constant negotiation between advancing weapon technology, economic realities, and the physical limits of the human body. While armor eventually expanded to cover more of the arms and legs, the underlying principle endured. The torso and head determined life or death, and protecting those first always outweighed the luxury of armoring every limb.